Hey everyone. The next video that I'm going to do is different from the attributes of God, but it is something that I said that I will talk about, just some difficult teachings from the Bible. And what this video is going to be about is, does Jehovah hate people? Is it possible for him to hate? I was having a conversation one time with a gentleman who was a pastor for 40 years, and I mentioned to him, just in the conversation, that God hates people. And he jumped very quickly to correct me and say, oh, no, no, no. God loves the sinner but hates the sin. And while that is a true statement, it is also not the whole truth. So again, the question is, does Jehovah hate? And the answer is yes, he can and he does. Now, before I go any further into this video, I want to make very clear that because I talk about these things, does not mean that I am a hate-filled person, and it does not mean that I enjoy talking about Jehovah's hate. What I want to know is this, everything about Jehovah, and he's been faithful in that. As I've just studied his word diligently, he's taught me so much about himself, and this is one of those aspects. So we as professing Christians should want to know everything we can about Jehovah, and he lets us know a lot about himself through his inspired word. Now I want to read Psalms 5:5 and Psalms 11:5. Psalms 5, actually I'll read 4 and 5. It says, "For you are not a God who takes pleasure in wickedness. No evil dwells with you. The boastful shall not stand before your eyes. You hate all who do iniquity." And then Psalms 11:5, it says this, "The Lord tests the righteous and the wicked, and the one who loves violence, his soul hates." So in his own inspired words, he tells us that he hates those who do iniquity. In iniquity, you can put underneath that wickedness, evil, those who take pleasure in sinning. And he also hates those who love violence. And that can mean those who do wrong, or are cruel, or do injustice. Hate in the Hebrew is the word sonē, meaning, the only definition in the Hebrew that I could find for sonē is to hate. In the Greek, I looked that up, and the definition of the word hate is to detest, which doesn't really give a whole lot, so I wanted to find a better perspective of what detest means. So I looked it up in the dictionary, and to detest means to feel an intense and often violent opposition toward. And certainly we have examples from the Bible. Look at the flood. With the exception of Noah and his family, every person was involved in wickedness and evil. And even though Noah warned them for 120 years, they would not change. And so God's hatred for those people who did iniquity came to pass when he flooded the earth. We can also look at Sodom and Gomorrah, the intense wickedness that was taking place. Jehovah had a violent opposition towards them in the result of he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah because of their wickedness and their evil doing. So since people hate and Jehovah hates, what's the difference? Well, as I mentioned earlier, we have a sinful nature. And with our sinful nature and our hatred comes a malice that Jehovah just does not have. He does not have a sinful nature. So his hatred is different from our hatred. He can love and hate a worker of iniquity simultaneously. We cannot do that. So if you profess to be a Christian, how important is it for you to know Jehovah? Does knowing this about him make you pause and think about him? Does it change your perspective about him, knowing that he hates many people? Remember, he does not change, so he will always be love, and he will always be compassionate, and he will always be merciful. But he will always hate the worker of iniquity and the one who does violence. And if you want to see if that's still applicable today, then I would encourage you to read the book of Revelation from chapters 4 through 19 for more evidence.